Yeah, lots to get to today in a packed show. Stuart Robson, Brian McBride, Shaka Hislop alongside me, Adrian Healy. And there's really one story dominating the news in European football at least, and that is the report in the Times that senior Manchester United players are more than unhappy with the approach of manager Louis van Gaal. Want to get your reactions. We also have Gabriel Marcotti on board. Gab, let's go to you first. First of all, tell us who you understand the players are. The report said senior players, and what exactly are the details of their beef with manager Louis van Gaal?
So, I mean, it's a number of things that were covered. Some of it is to do with the treatment of certain players, like Rafael, who of course wasn't allowed to go on the on United's preseason tour because they were going to sell him. Unlike Johnny Evans, who they also sold but was allowed to go. There's some personality conflicts with the goalkeeping coach, Franz Hoek, reportedly, and the treatment of certain keepers like Victor Valdez. But the key thing seems to be there's a bit of an unease with some of the training methods, specifically way too much time spent on tactics, way too much time spent on video analysis, and certain types of tactical sessions as well, I should say. And specifically the way he often splits the players up into groups, defenders this way, midfielders that way, strikers that way, rather than having the more collective sessions, which I think the players were accustomed to. I should also throw in here that we're talking about two senior players that they've been named in reports as Rooney and Carrick. So you're talking about the captain here, you know, going and sharing their views with Van Gaal, which is something that I think officially the club would say, well, we welcome that because, you know, we want feedback from the players, and Louis no doubt welcomes that. Now, whether you believe that or not is up to you.
Doesn't seem too positive for Manchester United. Is it actually a big deal, Stuart?
Well, the captain should be allowed to go to Louis van Gaal and talk to him about tactics, talk to him about the training methods, talk to him about how he's treating players. That should be part of a captain's job. But I'm not sure what they've got to moan about. They talked about too much tactical work. Well, that's one of the problems with the English game. And Gabriella Marcotti wrote a book with Vialli saying that English players don't do enough tactical work. So I can't quite see why that's a problem. You know, I think the treatment of Rafael, he was going to go anyway. So what's the point in taking him on the tour? Johnny Evans, obviously he went, but that's a different matter. So I'm not sure they've got too much to worry about. And I'm not sure Van Gaal's got too much to worry about. He'll shake it off. He'll stick to his principles. And he might listen to the players, but he needs to make sure he's in charge.
The insinuation, Brian, seems to be that Van Gaal is too rigid tactically. He doesn't let the players play the game in front of them.
Yeah, I think he's very philosophical, isn't he? And you can see if you've watched any training that he's very much a controlling figure, whether it's free kicks or onward. But I think it's good leadership that the captains had actually gone to him, and you want to have that sort of talk. I mean, you say it.
You did it at Fulham, didn't you?
Yeah, you do it at every place.
I was going to say, have you guys ever run into any situation in your careers like this where senior players
I got the sack at Wimbledon because the manager asked the players to have a meeting, and 4 senior players didn't like the way I was taking training and didn't like the way I was quite strict with the plan, and I wanted a certain style of football, and 4 of the players, it didn't suit them. And they were senior players. They went back to the manager and said they needed to change, or I needed to change the way I was dealing with them. I got the sack for it. So there's an example.
Yeah, and it goes back to flexibility, right? When your captain goes in, like 3 different occasions that come to my head. You know, 2 of them, the captain, I would go in and talk, and the coach would actually say, okay, you know what, we'll take that on board. We'll make a few adjustments, and that's good. You know, the times you run into problems are when you run into a coach that says, no, this is my way. And I know he comes across as that. I just can't see this being the Dutch way. I know the Dutch are very open, and he's talked about wanting this sort of openness through his team. Hopefully he takes it on board, and there's
I'll say this.
recourse.
Outfield players are such divas. Right? How dare we be separated into midfielders and as a keeper, you're shunted into the corner of the training pitch somewhere. Okay. You're lucky if you get a ball or 2. We call you when we're ready, and we get on with it. We're fine.
Who's crying now?
I'm just making that point. A couple of things jump out at me here. First of all, I played with a couple of Dutch players during my time, and it was always encouraged, and it seems culturally acceptable that players go to the manager whenever they have something to discuss, whether it's positive or whether it's a concern, and the managers welcome that. So no real surprise, and for me, no alarms go off that a player is going to see Louis van Gaal, who openly accepts this player knocking on his door to voice a concern. I see nothing of it. I think the bigger concerns is when you have players voicing disapproval of how others in the dressing room are being treated. That is never a good thing, never ends well, because players in that dressing room, whether you're a stalwart, whether you're young or whether you're far more experienced, or whether you're going to be sold in this summer, they expect to be treated with a certain amount of dignity. And when you don't get it, the whole dressing room can turn against you. So that is the most concerning issue for me.
Yeah, I agree. And you look at the Pedro transfer. I mean, you know, the fact that Valdez wasn't treated well, he's a buddy of Pedro's. It might not have been his major decision, but players talk, and they want to go to a place they know they're going to get treated correctly.
It's okay for people to go to the manager and have and air their views, as long as it's for the benefit of the team and not individuals. That's when it's a problem, when individuals are trying to get their way.
Gab, these headlines make it very difficult not to remember what happened to Louis van Gaal at his last major job, Bayern Munich, where it all went astray a year and a half into his stewardship there.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and I think the lesson to some degree is, you know, if you're winning games and you're flying at the top of the table, you know, you could have the players train in a parking lot wearing tutus, and they're not going to care. But if the results aren't coming, that's where these things suddenly, you know, bubble over and become debates. Obviously, it all fell apart at Bayern Munich in year 2. I think he was let go when he was 4th in the table. You know, and this was a team that had won the double the year before, reached the Champions League final. He managed to rebuild the team after Jurgen Klinsmann's disastrous reign in one season, but then it all fell apart again in year 2. And obviously, it was a very acrimonious split between Bayern and Van Gaal, and it remains acrimonious to this day.
Louis van Gaal just cannot keep out of the headlines at the moment. He also said this on Anthony Martial's transfer. Remember the world record transfer fee for a teenager? I've not brought Martial for me, he said. I brought him for the next manager at Manchester United, who just happened to be Ryan Giggs, sat next to him at that point. It was a ridiculous amount of money, but it's the crazy world we are in. Interesting to hear him say that.
Yeah, there's your centre forward.
They spent way too much money.
Yeah, they have spent way too much money. And is he going to play in the team? I don't think he's going to get in the team for quite some while. You spent a lot of money on a player that might not start for quite some while.
Is that fair, though, to say it's for the next Manchester United manager and not for him?
You never know how it's going to turn out. But I think as a player, you hear it, and he knows that he was overpaid for himself.
Right.
But what it does also, it gives you motivation. You know that you're going to have a little bit more pressure because of it. But you look at it in a positive way, in a sense that Manchester United sees a future in him. It might have been 2 moves from now where he might have actually cost that amount of money. So business-wise, probably covered some boxes for Woodward. But I think for me, if I'm that player and I've just been bought for that kind of money, I know I'm putting my head down and working my tail off.
He's not doing himself any favours with the upper management at Manchester United. He's like, we overpaid.
I think that's the least of his concerns, in all honesty. And to be quite frank, I think Louis van Gaal is just being perfectly honest with what he sees and his plans for the club and how it's gone. Regardless of who you are, if you're involved in this game and you follow the game, the money that's spent on players now is simply ridiculous. And I think he's just echoing that more than anything. And this is not just a sideswipe at Martial, but it's the fact that the game has got to the point where this is what you pay for a player to speculate. And that's just the way it is. And some of us can't, it's not easy for some of us older players and older ex-players to accept that.
Coming up next, he's a record breaker. He's also the recipient of some pretty kind words from the best ever. Now, Wayne Rooney, fresh off his record-breaking performance for England, got this from Lionel Messi. Wayne Rooney is, for me, once-in-a-generation player. Rooney is exceptional quality, technical ability, as well as being one of the strongest players I've faced with an exceptional work rate. That's 3 exceptionals in one sentence. There is nobody like him. High praise indeed from one Lionel Messi. What do you make of it?
Well, he's been a very good player. He's been an excellent player for Manchester United. He's been an excellent player for England. He's one of the best players that England have produced for quite some while. I'm still not sure he's a world-class player. He's not like Ronaldo, he's not like Messi. I wouldn't say he's as good as Arjen Robben, but he's a very good player.
Oh, he's definitely a world-class player.
I was about to say,
Listen, I think there are so many attributes that he has that any team would want to have. He's a goal scorer if need be. He can set up players and teammates. His movement's excellent as far as creating space. And let's say he's having an off day. He's not going to be the player that goes and hides.
Is he playing in his best position, though, at the moment? Is he playing in his best position?
No, I agree with you there, Stuart. I think he's not an outright number 9. But, someone playing underneath a 9 is...
I think
is he the perfect example of the English not always appreciating what they have?
Probably. Probably, and I'm not sure if I'm best positioned to answer that question in terms of appreciation for English players. But you look at Wayne Rooney and you understand what Lionel Messi is getting at. All right, no, he's not a Messi, he's not a Ronaldo, he's not an Arjen Robben, certainly not in an attacking sense. But on the other side of the ball, I feel he adds more defensive strength when needed than either of the other 3 can. He's versatile, and he's been the best English player of a generation. I think without question. So you understand why people feel as strongly. Certainly fellow pros feel as strongly as they do about Wayne Rooney. But I can't understand.
Would you pick Wayne Rooney ahead of Steven Gerrard as the best player of the generation?
Yeah.
Yes, I think I would, actually. I think I would.
And that's saying a lot. You're right. I mean, Steven Gerrard was an amazing player for Liverpool and a great leader for England for a long time. But I just Wayne, he adds more going forward, of course, and he can defend for your team.
I think he gives so much that is underappreciated, especially from a player who is known for.
I think the disappointing thing for him is that on the world stage at the World Cups and the European Championships, barring the first one, he hasn't played at his best, and I think that's just held him back from being that world-class player.
It's interesting. I don't remember Lionel Messi ever saying something similar about Cristiano Ronaldo, but that's... Something for another day.
When he buys his cologne. Yeah, that's...
Gab, switch focus to, stay in Spain. David De Gea, not in Spain, staying in Manchester. Signs are that he's going to sign a long-term contract with Manchester United. What's your understanding of the situation?
Yeah, well, the papers here in London, most of them leading with a story on Friday. It stems from the fact that there were initial reports coming out of Spain that hinted at this. And then today, Jorge Mendes, David De Gea's agent, he was photographed going into United's training camp at Carrington. And then he left with De Gea in a cab, made his way to De Gea's house. So the implication is that he's going to sign a deal for a lot of money, something around about 200 grand a week, around about 10 million pounds. My take on this is that I don't really see why this would be in De Gea's interest, unless there's some kind of fixed release clause put in there. You know, something like they did back in the day with Cristiano Ronaldo. The difference being, of course, Cristiano's contract wasn't winding down, and it was just a question of basically allowing him to leave. It's a very, very weird one. I wonder to some degree too if playing in the background isn't also the fact that there were also reports that De Gea was going to split from Jorge Mendes as well. So watch this space. I wonder if maybe we aren't getting a little bit carried away here.
What's your take?
Well, I think it's good for Manchester United if they could sign him to a contract, because he's now we're talking about world-class, he's a world-class goalkeeper, and Manchester United would be a far better team with him in the side.
Is it the right thing for David De Gea to do, Ray?
Listen, I question the story. If he's leaving Carrington in a cab, I mean, let's be honest here, they're probably in a little nicer car than a cab.
His cab company.
I think you could see this happening. You look at the fact that putting things behind you as a player, knowing the club wants you, they didn't let you get your dream move. You wait a year. Does that also mean then you're not playing? I think there's question marks for him that he probably wants answered, and if he can get the money, then it's great.
Gab wants in. Gab?
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I wouldn't, I mean, in the end, let's not forget, he stayed at United, but United and Real Madrid had agreed a deal for him to move. Every indication was that Van Gaal, was going to start him sooner rather than later. I get the sense here that there really is that there's some level of posturing, and is it a good deal for United? I'm wondering if this isn't a little bit like what Borussia Dortmund did with Robert Lewandowski, where they gave him a new deal, they paid him more money, they kept him happy in his final year, knowing they were going to lose him. If you're United, if you put in a guaranteed price, something reasonable, obviously, in this situation, then maybe it is best all round. De Gea's happy, makes a little more money. He's only on something like 50 grand a week right now, sterling. And, you get a really good, motivated season out of him. And then if he leaves, well, you get a fee, and probably a little more than well, certainly more than you'd get if he was going to leave for nothing.
Well, we started this segment with Lionel Messi doing the talking, and we're doing the talking back on the pitch with Barcelona with Neymar and Suarez for company. We'll preview their big tilt with Atletico next. It's always a game that gets the juices flowing in La Liga. Barcelona and Atletico Madrid. Look at the contrast over the last 2 seasons. Atletico won 5 out of 6 against Barcelona 2 seasons ago. Barca turned the tables on them last year, winning all 4 encounters. They're both off to great starts this season. Both have won their first 2 games. Barcelona scoring just the 2 goals, though, in 2 1-0 wins. Atletico have doubled that tally. So let's bring in Gab Marcotti for his thoughts on this weekend's encounter. It's tough, isn't it, in week 3 to call any game a pivotal encounter in the league season, but is this one, Gab?
I don't think so, not just yet. I mean, the focus obviously would be on Barcelona, the fact that they've only scored 2 goals in La Liga. But, guess what? They've taken 6 of 6 points. Neymar is back and fired up. Last year, he got into more than a few scraps with the Atletico Madrid players. They weren't happy with some of his showboating. He wasn't happy that he was getting lumps kicked out of him. Let's take this for what it is. This is a great rivalry between 2 really special managers, I think, in Luis Enrique and Diego Simeone, and 2 huge contrasts in style between Atleti and Barca. It's not going to be a title decider just yet. I think hopefully it'll just be a tremendous spectacle.
Prediction, Gab, what we're going to see results-wise at the Vicente Calderon?
Both teams having some issues with goals, so I expect them to sort of confound this. I expect a lot of goals. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw.
I'll be watching that, that's for sure. Might be watching this too, Gab. The Milan derby, the Derby della Madonnina. Both teams 2 games into their respective campaigns. 6 points for Inter, 3 for AC Milan. Both teams have gone through so many changes in terms of personnel and philosophies in the last couple of seasons as well. Gab, what are you expecting?
Fascinating contrast, both in the way, the state of mind of these 2 teams. Inter have spent a lot of money. Mancini has gotten pretty much everything he wanted. But Milan, by the same token, it's a bit of a mess right now. Their new stadium looks further away. They had a whole event today for the fans at their headquarters. Mihailovic was treated like a rock star and started singing songs with the fans. The fans, meanwhile, demanding the chief executive, Adriano Galliani, leave the club. There's talk of another protest like the one they had at Empoli recently. It's really interesting. Mihailovic seems to be hell-bent on getting the players and the fans on his side, not so much the leadership of the club. And also should give a shout-out to the fact that we could see 2 of the more, shall we say, colorful strikers in the game today in Mario Balotelli, who recently had his license revoked, doing 85 in a 30-mile-per-hour zone, and Mauro Icardi, of course, and you just need to go on Twitter to find out more about him.
We are all going there right now. Stuart, I know, is excited about this game, Derby.
I'm certainly excited. The story is in AC Milan because Mihailovic has got a really hard job there. He's got 2 good strikers, Bacca, Adriano, but elsewhere on the field they're not good enough. I saw them against Empoli. They won the game 2-1. They were disjointed in midfield. The back players didn't understand what they were trying to do. They were all over the place. And I think if Inter play well, they're going to win the game comfortably.
It's early in the season, isn't it? Week 3 for a big derby like this.
It is. I think Inter would have definitely liked this to come at this time, except Miranda now out, injured. He's a big force back there. You can see they only allowed 1 goal. I think that was a big thing for Inter coming into this. But the additions of Jajic, I really see Inter doing very well this year. And, of course, this game sort of can catapult them, continue them on.
Jovetic coming off a brace himself. I think there were questions about Stefan Jovetic coming back to Serie A, how he would fare after limited opportunities in Manchester, and all of a sudden he's hit the ground running. Now, both these clubs have made huge changes in the summer. It seems that Inters are gelling slightly better. They're at home. I think they're favourite.
They're favourite, but will they win? Gab, what's going to happen with Inter as the home team?
I'm with Shaka. You know, people often say derbies are impossible to predict and all that, but I think Inter right now, they're not playing great, but they're just a lot more solid top to bottom. I'm gonna predict an Inter victory here, unless Mihailovic can get some sort of massive emotional reaction. But no, all the signs say Inter.
Coming up, it's a top-of-the-table clash in the Premier League. It's Manchester and London. It's Man City, but Crystal Palace. Now, the Premier League standings looking like this. Heading into the 5th weekend of the season, Manchester City and Crystal Palace are the top two. Now, we're used to Manchester against London encounters at the top of the Premier League, but City and Palace, who meet this weekend. What about this? The SPI rating at Manchester City is at 59% favourites to win at Selhurst Park. 3-1 the draw. Palace rank outsiders on home territory. Clash of styles and philosophies and budgets, Stuart.
Well, Alan Pardew, Shaka may disagree, has always been a long ball man in my view, but he's got players in the front areas that can run with the ball. They've got pace. Sacco, we know, is very good. Punching, I think, is a really good player, a clever player. Balassi, when he's playing at his best. So they've certainly got players that can hurt Man City.
You played for Pardew?
I did.
He's more than a long ball merchant, isn't he?
Oh, he had me in the team. Everything starts with the goalkeeper, as Stuart rightly knows.
He had a good view, though, of what was going on.
That's right. I mean, you look at these two, and Palace, as good a start to the season as it is, it gives them confidence. But, I mean, you look at City and how good they've been, and right now, the Premier League, nobody's a match for them.
But could there be a slip-up for City, Brian?
Oh, there's always a chance, isn't there? But, you know, you look at Palace's strengths are about catching people and the pace of the team. They're very good, of course, when they get in the final third. They've got good movement, but City's pace is right there with them. So that'll nullify that. You add in the fact that City can just pass the ball around anybody at the moment. They're scoring goals like crazy. So, yeah, I just see a City win.
It's the game of the weekend. No. Yeah, lots to get to today in a packed show. Stuart Robson, Brian McBride, Shaka Hislop alongside me, Adrian Healy. There's really one story dominating the news in European football, at least, and that is the report in the Times that senior Manchester United players are more than unhappy with the approach of manager Louis van Gaal. Want to get your reactions. We also have Gabriel Marcotti on board. Gab, let's go to you first. First of all, tell us.
There's a bit of an unease with some of the training methods, specifically way too much time spent on tactics, way too much time spent on video analysis, and certain types of tactical sessions as well, I should say. And specifically the way he often splits the players up into groups, defenders this way, midfielders that way, strikers that way, rather than having the more collective sessions, which I think the players were accustomed to. I should also throw in here that we're talking about two senior players that they've been named in reports as Rooney and Carrick. So you're talking about the captain here, you know, going and sharing their views with.
He was going to go anyway. So what's the point in taking him on the tour? Johnny Evans obviously he went, but that's a different matter. So I'm not sure they've got too much to worry about, and I'm not sure Van Gaal's got too much to worry about. He'll shake it off. He'll stick to his principles, and he might listen to the players, but he needs to make sure he's in charge.
The insinuation, Brian, seems to be that Van Gaal is too rigid tactically. He doesn't let the players play the game in front of them.
Yeah, I think he's very philosophical, isn't he? And you can see if you've watched any training that he's very much a controlling figure, whether it's free kicks or onward. But I think it's good leadership that the captains had actually gone to him, and you want to have that.
Who you understand the players are? The report said senior players, and what exactly are the details of their beef with manager Louis van Gaal?
So, I mean, it's a number of things that were covered. Some of it is to do with the treatment of certain players, like Rafael, who of course wasn't allowed to go on the on United's preseason tour because they were going to sell him. Unlike Johnny Evans, who they also sold but was allowed to go. There's some personality conflicts with the goalkeeping coach, Franz Hoek, reportedly, and the treatment of certain keepers like Victor Valdez. But the key thing seems to be there's and how, which is something that I think officially the club would say, well, we welcome that because, you know, we want feedback from the players. And Louis, no doubt, welcomes that. Now, whether you believe that or not is up to you.
Doesn't seem too positive for Manchester United. Is it actually a big deal, Stuart?
Well, the captain should be allowed to go to Louis van Gaal and talk to him about tactics, talk to him about the training methods, talk about how he's treating players. That should be part of a captain's job. But I'm not sure what they've got to moan about. They talked about too much tactical work. Well, that's one of the problems with the English game. And Gabriella Marcotti wrote a book with Vialli saying that English players don't do enough tactical work. So I can't quite see why that's a problem. You know, I think the treatment of Rafael